Okay, let's start on part 1. I'm going to show you how to start a starter. So I tend to like these kinds of jars for fermentation because they have a hinge lid. So you can have it be completely closed by a latch and it's sealed off. But if the air expands enough, it'll pop open. I hate the way that it'll pop open and it won't shatter your jar, because the amount of times I've heard of people having a closed jar and they screwed it down super tight and it exploded their jar. It can happen. It totally can happen. Or it makes a huge mess. So I'm going to show you how to make it, and then I'm going to go over some of the kind of like myths surrounding starter. So I'm going to just start off by saying, get a scale. You don't have to get a fancy scale. I think this one was like $35 something on Amazon, and it's like a really good like quality scale. Hold please. Okay, sorry, kiddo. So you're gonna want a scale. You can get like one for like $10 at Walmart. I mean, they're not hard to find and they're not super expensive. If you're gonna be baking in any capacity with like breads and things, you're gonna want a scale. It makes life easier. Okay, anyways, now that I'm off my soapbox, you're going to take equal amounts of water and flour. I use Arrowhead organic flour. I like to use Arrowhead organic flour just because I don't like pesticides in my food. So there's that. So what you're going to do is you're going to start with a small amount of 25 grams of water. Actually, we'll do 50. We'll do 50. So you're going to start with 50 grams of water. Now the nice thing about water is it weighs the same amount as the same amount is grams for milliliters, if that makes sense. So 1 milliliter weighs the same as 1 gram. So I know that I'm gonna do 50 grams. I'll just use a measuring cup that says 50 milliliters. That's like the only thing you can really do that with. But use a scale. It just makes life easier. Okay. Now I'm gonna get my flour and I'm gonna weigh that out. Do not use, okay, zero it out. So it's back to 0. I'm gonna pour this in. Okay. And you could probably hear my husband giving my one child a haircut. Okay, so now we're going to mix it. And I have a reverse osmosis water filter, but you do not have to use any kind of fancy water. If you have good, clean drinking water from your home, just use your tap water. You can even, if you're worried about the chlorine in your tap water, like, then you probably shouldn't be drinking it. But I got flour on me. But if you are worried about it in your water, I won't go on a huge tangent. Just let it sit on your counter for like an hour or 2, because you'll notice it kind of like almost fizzles. Just let it sit for like an hour covered, and then a lot of that stuff kind of like dissipates after a while. So you'll be fine. But like honestly, just use your water. It's fine. Use room temperature. You don't want it hot. You don't want it cold. Room temperature water, and then you'll have your starter. And this is what it'll look like when you're very first starting out. Okay, it's kind of like muffin batter. And then I just kind of scrape it down. You can totally use like a little spatula or whatever. I just use that because it's easiest. And then you're gonna close it up and mark at wherever it's at on your jar. Like this one, I marked, this is where it was. Oops, kind of rolled up a little bit. This is where it was this morning. And I mean, when I fed it, and then it rose up to here. A good healthy starter will, and you want to just keep this room temperature out on your counter, wherever. You'll notice that starters usually don't double, they actually triple. So keep that in mind. Okay, and now let's talk about some myths about starter and how you can save it and keep it and all that while I eat a piece of my sourdough bread. This is so yummy with butter. Okay, so I want to actually take a bite because that's annoying when people are chewing and eating. But so can you freeze starter? Yes and no. So you can freeze it. It will save the flavor of the sourdough starter, but it will have no leavening properties. So that's also something that you'll want to keep in mind if you're wanting to save it for like starting it back up again later. Just pop it in your fridge. Now this is only if you know you're not going to be able to maintain it. Otherwise, try and just keep a very small amount and feed it every day. Otherwise, you can have a discard jar and keep it in your fridge. And I mean, it works. You don't have to feed it every day. It just depends on your level of commitment and what you care about and what you don't care about. I have at times like known that like with the whole hurricane and everything that happened, I knew I wasn't going to be able to maintain my starter and feed it every day with everything going on, and it was under a boil advisory. So I just popped it in my fridge and left it for like a month. And like did not feed it or anything, didn't touch it. And I'm going to show you real quick what it looks like if that happens. So this is a discard jar. I always keep one just in case something catastrophic happens. Well, so see how there's this layer on top that looks really gross? That's hooch. So that's pretty much alcohol that has come from the yeast in the starter. So what you do is do not stir this in. I know people that do. It makes it extremely bitter and super sour and acidic in your starter. You don't want that. Pour it off, stir it, bring it up to room temperature and feed it. And then it'll take a couple days to get it back up to normal, working, but then it'll be fine again. So that's what you do. Now, how to properly store your starter out on your counter. Do not put it a cloth cover. You see all those cute little fermentation kits and they have a jar and they have this cute little cloth lid. Don't do it. Also, don't do that when you're letting your bread proof bulk ferment in a bowl. Don't do that either. It dries it out and it's gross. If you use a cloth or a paper towel or any kind of permeable layer on top, it will grow bacteria or mold. Either one. And it dries it out and it's just gross. So you want an impermeable lid like this one. So this is a sealable lid. I don't tighten it down super tight, but I do tighten it all the way, like fingertip tight, kind of like with canning. Or I use these kinds of jars, which are like fermentation jars. You can also use a pickle pipe. That's what they're called. They're a special lid that's for fermentation where it lets air out. It doesn't allow anything to get back in, especially if you have gnats that happen or like fruit flies during the summertime. It's horrible here. So those are kind of like the myths. Now, another thing you can do is you can also dehydrate your starter to save it. So this is the end of my starter talk. The next video I'm going to do is we're going to make a loaf of bread together. Okay, good luck, you guys. Bye.